So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kids of all ages. I'm Bill Nye. I'm the Vice President of the Planetary Society, and those of you unfamiliar with the Planetary Society, I won't say I'm shocked, but it was started by Carl Sagan, Bruce Murray, who is head of the Jet Propulsion Lab, and Lou Friedman, who's our executive director. I'm sure many of you know Lou. I'm the Vice President. Today we're going to talk about the International Space Station. And I just want to emphasize to everybody, we really want this to be interactive. We want questions from the audience. I know it's very exciting and it's great when the various people come up and they have prepared remarks and they read along about the International Space Station and the 10th anniversary and this and that. And then the part that I really like, when these people are up here, not these ladies and gentlemen, but other people, and the part that really cracks me up is when they go, I am very excited to be here. But I am very excited to be here because, as you may know, can anybody tell me November 20th, 1998? Anyone? Yes, it was the first part of the space station launched from Baikonur. And we have, really everybody, we have the world's foremost authorities sitting up here for us. On my far right, camera left, as we say in the business, Mark Uran, right? Uran, like you're an astronaut. Yes, but it would be like that. Mark Uran, thank you. And he's the Associate Deputy Administrator of NASA, right, in charge of the space station. Is that right? Did I get the title right? It's close enough. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. And then next is Benoit Marcotte. He's the Director General of Operations from the Canadian Space Agency. And you guys just picked a new president. That's his title. He's an astronaut. Yeah. So it's fantastic. But you are in charge of operations, so you run the show in Canada. And next we have, I'm doing my best here, Chaki close. Chaki Mukai,
yes.
Yeah, who, unlike many of us, has flown in space on the International Space Station. And then Alexei Krasnov, yep, and you were there, right, in Baikonur. And then finally is the other Mark Hepner, who's are you the head of utilization?
Yes, I am, and actually it's also promotion, but we have considered that we don't need to promote station anymore. So it's actually science and applications. On the
science and applications. But speaking of which, everybody, I hope, got their International Space Station Go for research. This is telling you, advertising, if I may, all the laboratories that are available. And my understanding is you guys take cash. It's euros. Do you take pounds?
Well, it's a global endeavor, so we take anything.
Anything? Oh, anything. Well, that's good. It's good to know. And I know that, and I understand that the credit, though, you don't take credit right now. That's what I heard. And there's one more thing. On the newsstand today, Mark brought us the latest Scientific American, which has a feature on looking up and the space station. Yeah. So this isn't even on the newsstands yet, but it'll be on today. Is that right?
It's right. Today at the ESA stand we will have a short presentation, and there will be copies available. Not a lot, because the real distribution will only be in October. But we thought this was a nice opportunity to show it. It gives a European perspective on using the space station and how we are prepared on also the future of that, because there will be very exciting research to come as well.
That's great. So what I'd like to start with, first of all, everybody get ready with your questions. But what I'd like to start with, Alexei, you were there, 1998. And what happened?
It was a very exciting moment, because we were spending a lot of time, quality time and not very, talking about the legal framework. Expecting that while we were talking, the real hardware we were building in our plan as the first module to be prepared for the launch in 1998. And eventually, it was coincidence. In 1998, in January, we signed an agreement all together with all partners. We achieved the accord which actually formulated how we will work. And later on, the same year, we launched the first element. From the public perspective, it was a great impression that we were able to work in such a great speed.
It looks smooth, you mean?
Yeah.
Surprising. Well, a lot's been done in the last 10 years in space, on the space station specifically. What do you anticipate for the next 10 years? Anybody?
The next
Mark?
10 years, I think, is going to be really exciting. We're going to complete the assembly here in 2 years by the end of 2010, and that begins the real utilization era for the station. We've used it a little bit as we've been building it on the margins, but once the assembly is complete, our crew time is going to double next year when we go.
How long is a doubled crew time?
Well, it goes from 3 to 6 astronauts. So we'll have at least the equivalent of a dedicated astronaut full-time just doing scientific and technological research on the station. And that's going to be exciting.
Jackie, how long can you stay on a space station and be comfortable?
Well, unfortunately, my flight was a short flight. But if somebody says, oh, Chiaki, you stay in the space as far as you like, then I want to stay for maybe 1 year or something like that. So space is exciting, and as you mentioned, this year is such an exciting year for us Japanese and also the international partners, because utilization program of the International Space Station has just begun as the entire team, I mean the 5 IPs, like Bill, you mentioned that we have this kind of pamphlet, and if you just take a look at this, there are 5 IPs. IP means international partners. So now we are on board at the same time to start the utilization program. It's a wonderful time. So I'm going to stay long.
So let me just tell you, everybody, you are the head of biomedical research at JAXA,
Yes.
right, for the Japanese Space Agency. So I've always wondered since I was a little kid, how long can you stay in space and be comfortable? Is it a year?
So far, I guess the longest time is more than a year. So medically, I think it's okay for the people to stay more than 1 year. But of course, still quite a lot of many things that we need to measure things.
Exercising and so on?
Yeah, exercise is one of them. Of course, radiation protection is one of them, and then good nutrition, and also a lot. Yeah. Because Earth is our place to live. So if we explore outside of the Earth, the gravity, there's no. And then a lot of radiations. So
that's what you anticipate. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, this is a joke I make most of the time when there are no astronauts present. But if you would really do nothing against the absence of gravity, astronauts would turn into jellyfish. They would lose their bones, they would lose their muscles.
What about their minds?
Well,
Psychology is also playing a good role. I'll remind that there was a precedent once that Valery Polyakov of Russia spent almost a year and a half on orbit, continuous. That's the longest flight ever achieved.
That was on Mir?
That was on Mir.
Yeah.
And for the rehabilitation took a lot of efforts, and he is a doctor by himself. He knows what he does.
I meant to tell you, Alexei, you're in charge of human spaceflight
Right.
at the
Yes.
Russian Federation Space Agency, right?
Right.
So you're an expert on this. And so he did a year and a half.
He did a year and a half.
Is he
exactly.
okay now?
He's okay now. He's the deputy director of the Institute for Biomedical Problems. He's working in the same field for the rehabilitation of the cosmonauts, to work on the processes and methods to help cosmonauts and astronauts to stay longer in space and to actually after they return, to make sure that they will rehabilitate properly to get full functionality.
Yeah. Your bones have to regrow once they get stressed again and so on. So what is the next exciting thing that's going to happen? I stumped him. Yes.
No, not at all. I mean, I would say there are many different research areas that we are going into, but even if we would stay on this human research, how do you keep your body healthy and indeed your mind healthy as well? It goes together. I mean, we have started to scratch the surface. We know what we should do, but there is much more research to come. And what is very exciting to my mind is also that this will lead also to applications in healthcare on Earth. And we see some examples. You just mentioned the bone research, which is not exactly identical, but it looks like osteoporosis that happens in a lot of people when they turn older. The nice thing, again, of using astronauts, so to say, as guinea pigs is that these are absolutely healthy people.
Astronauts are guinea pigs?
Of course they are. Yeah,
I'm shocked.
Well, they
I had no idea. I thought they were in charge.
No.
I mean, someone else is manipulating them, and I can't. I'm taken aback.
But Bill, I would like to say that they're not the guinea pig. They're the professional subjects.
Yes.
Who understand.
Absolutely. Yes, I should hope so. Yes. What's going on with materials research?
Well, if I may, we are right now not yet completely ready to do materials research on space station. Next year, the NASA Material Science Research Rex will be launched. And there you can do a lot of research into metallurgy, solidification processes. But again, that's also a topic where we have already done some investigations on space station and on some other carriers as well. And we already learn how to make new materials. You have to integrate both research in space with research on the ground, but we can make new materials. At ESA, we have a project running with the European Commission where we use those materials to build new turbine blades for aircraft engines or for power plants, making them lighter, more efficient, reducing fuel consumption. So there are real benefits there.
Metal without grains, or
it's the grain structure that you
orientation
want to
of the grains.
exactly.
Yeah. That'd be. I'd love some. Now, speaking of that, I'm going to ask you guys. Are there any questions from the audience? Not yet. Well, pick a microphone. I don't want to tell you how to live, but number 2 looks good for you. Microphone number 2, please. And so if you have, just start with since, then make your comment, and then at the end of that, then you'd say, why don't they do something about it? That would make that your comment a question. So go ahead. What can you do for us?
I'd like to say, Bill, that you took the words right out of my mouth, but I'm going to say you didn't. This is a question for Mark Hempener. I'm speaking from a basic professional interest line. How much potential application does the International Space Station have for archaeological research?
Oh, now you stunned me.
Is this with seriously? Is this with radar? Kind of
well, the reason I ask is I organised a conference for the British Interplanetary Society a couple of years ago on archaeology for space, which resulted in an issue of their journal. I'm looking to try and organise another conference, possibly for 2010, if I can get enough speakers. So I guess it's partly a pitch to have you considered using the instrument. I mean, I'm not aware what the full instrumentation suite on the space station is, but presumably the Earth observation package could be used for some type of archaeological research, either radar, optical, infrared. I mean, I'm not sure what you've got.
Well, we do have optical instrumentation, and also the astronauts, of course, have opportunities to take photo sessions themselves. Honestly, in our suite of scientific experimentation, there is no archaeological research being asked for at this stage. I know, of course, that Earth observation satellites are very often used for those purposes. Actually, like Bill said in the introduction, we are open for business. So if there is a good idea, we will certainly look into it. Right now, at least in our portfolio, we don't have something like that, but I don't know, maybe one of the partners do.
Yeah, it might be interesting to note that we do cover 70% of the Earth's landmass, and historically we've done some archaeological investigations using remote sensing instruments of South America. So the potential is certainly there to do the same thing.
What did you find or discover in South America?
I wasn't personally involved in the programs, but I know that there were several ancient ruins that were discovered through space-based remote sensing. That was done by our Marshall Space Flight Center in the United States, and they, as a result, are working with other countries around the world that are interested in understanding where their archaeological treasures are hidden. And the station does make a good platform to launch that kind of an investigation.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, perhaps Mark and I could talk privately later on.
That's an outstanding question. Thank you. Now, along this line, I'm going to ask you guys a hard question. You all a hard question. What is it that the space station does? Let's say just in the example of archaeology, this would be photo reconnaissance or so. What is it that we can do from the space station that you can't do with a robotic satellite? You're a taxpayer and voter. This comes up quite a bit.
It's a variety of areas because everything we do on the space station with involvement of human beings, with involvement of crew. First of all, that is the addition of human being intellectual capabilities, the knowledge, the skill, judgment, which allows to actually to make right decision, to adjust, to go forward with a sequence of events. And that helps a lot. And that's one piece of the story. And the second piece of the story is we very often just like not acknowledging that we are learning to operate a huge orbital structure. That is very interesting from the practical and scientific standpoint for the future exploration goals. If we are to think about, and we are planning to, in the future to go to Moon and Mars, we will need to have this knowledge. We need to learn how to be within such a structure, how to assemble, to maintain it, to support ourselves as a crew for a long period of time, to be self-sufficient, autonomous. And that's the second part, which is very important, I believe, for the exploration goals as well. And third is basic science is well understood and known as a goal on the space station. Applied science is more or less not so visible so far.
You're talking about engineering?
The engineering which shall be a good spin-off for the industry on the Earth. That is growing, but slowly but surely, but in comparison with the basic science.
Well, when the thing's complete, when the station's complete, that stuff will probably be easier, right? There'll be.
Yep.
It won't be spending as much time putting things together.
Yes, in 2 years we will have all space station structure almost. Actually, we are planning to add some things to the space station again upon the decision, and we are sure that this decision will be formalized, that we will expand the lifespan of the space station until 2020 at least. And that talk was on the recent July heads of agency meeting in Paris. There was a unanimous judgment of the heads of agency that that is the right thing to do. However, that also will trigger a political decision of the respective governments, because it shall be a decision to actually to fund it longer than previously anticipated.
Yeah, that would be a 30-year lifetime for that structure, right? What's wearing out? Is there a lot of maintenance that has to be done if we're going to keep it flying till 2020?
So far on the robotic side, we are not seeing any wear and tear, other than maybe some lubrication problem on the arm, on the Canadarm2, when we thought that lubrication would last a long, long time. We're learning right now that maybe we will have to do something to maintain it better. But as far as the avionics, the electronics, the mechanical parts or so, things are working well. So we're pleased to see that. Hope we can continue to sustain that until the 2020 time frame.
2020, yeah. So please, we have a question, yeah. Hold it, Mr. Microphone, can you, or Ms. Yeah, go ahead.
Work?
There we go.
Yeah. Gerda Honig from the German Aerospace Center. Many of us are very much interested in sending humans to Mars, not only in order to be there, but to work there, doing research, exploration. And there are several problems existing, especially because of the long travel from Earth to Mars, microgravity, human health, radiation, and so on. Now and I see just a picture here how the cosmonauts are coming back from the long-term mission. So on Mars there's no hospital and even not a wheelchair to take them. We have now 5 agencies signing the space station. My question is, how much emphasis will you put in joint programs in order to cope and to cope with these problems and to find solutions for astronauts when they come to Mars to be in a healthy situation and do immediately the work?
Well, our primary mission in the United States, and I'm sure it's shared by our partners, is human biomedical research. The principal thing that we're using the station for is to understand how all the systems of the human body, the neurovestibular system, the muscular system, the cardiovascular, every one of these are affected by changes in gravity. So we'll use the station to begin those studies, and then we'll carry on those studies later in the moon when we can establish a moon base and understand what happens at 1/6 G. Because what we're really interested in over time is, are there any thresholds where the human body changes in its performance as a function of the gravity environment? This is going to be a long study.
If I may add on the global perspective, it's clear that we all talk together. We have different working groups looking into the life sciences area, and if we call, because actually you should not consider us as the brains, we are the tools. The brains are in the audience, I guess, the scientists who do the research in the end. And we call every other year for proposals, research proposals, and we do this globally. We do it together. We have one single call for proposals, and we select together the best proposals that would suit also these research questions. And I think it's very important. We really make sure that we together also execute them. We do an experiment with teams from different countries, using an American facility in our own European Columbus laboratory, for example. It's really a global endeavor that we're doing here.
We have another question. Or is there another comment?
Well, I was going to make a comment. We need to understand human body, the effect, the effect on the human body, but also when something goes wrong and we need to repair or cure something. Right now, it's relatively easy with the medical facilities on the ground being able to immediately provide support to crew on orbit. It will be very different when we have humans on Mars. So medical autonomy in our operational space medicine groups around the world are looking at that right now. How do we give greater autonomy to the crew in order to be able to get somebody better on orbit?
It's a complicated camping trip.
Yeah. Maybe very
hospitals are far away.
Chikai.
Yeah. I have some, Well, to go to the Mars and also to go to the moon, we really need to utilize the International Space Station as a test bed. That's why I'm very much interested in and excited to utilize it. And then, believe me, because I flew in space, the most interesting part of my space flight was not being in space. Being in space, of course, is microgravity. Being in space, you can see our beautiful planet from space. That was wonderful, but the most wonderful part of my space flight experience was return to the Earth. I realized that there's a gravity here, which I knew by book, but I didn't realize that gravity subjects to our body that strongly. So then I becomes a strong believer that we need the International Space Station, because the most beneficial part of the International Space Station is existing gravitational force is nearly zero, microgravity. So with the complement of the artificial gravity or centrifuge force, now you can create any kind of gravitational force in a very small increment, like 1,000 G level or something like that. Now we know what's happening on our body in 0G because we have 40 or 50 years of human space program history so far. But we don't know much about the fractional gravitational effect on our body, like 1/6 G, etc. So that's why it's exciting.
Do you want to build a module that spins? I've always, since I was a little kid, I always thought that would be fantastic.
In future, I believe that the artificial gravity is, to me, necessary if we stay long enough in space.
Bill,
But does not necessarily mean we need to spin International Space Station now.
Change things right now, yeah.
That's very appropriate. Just very short comment in addition to this, just to complement what Jackie said. Space station in existence, we do have it as a test bed for the future exploration goals, of course. And in addition, what we are doing is on Earth, we are planning to have a Mars 500 experiment, which is an isolation experiment for the crew members, international team, who will voluntarily go into the encapsulated, separated, isolated from the world for 500 days, simulating the psychological
Notice his tone of voice.
environment.
500 days.
Yeah, that's what it takes.
500 days. That is a very challenging experiment which we are planning to do.
If you've ever had a roommate, you know that's...
To get results which will be very helpful for the Martian expedition.
So we have another question. 500 days, yes.
Okay, Johan Ehrström from Hydro Aluminium, Germany. I have a question in connection to the presentation previously about the Chinese manned flight. So as we had heard, the next Chinese manned flight is planned for 2011. Could you think about to invite the Chinese to dock with International Space Station for a visit of friendship, very much comparable to the docking of the Soyuz and Apollo in the 70s?
Any comments? Having China visit the International Space Station?
These are diplomatic initiatives, so they tend to be above the authority levels of the individual agencies. It's our governments that will make those decisions in the future.
And maybe to add to that, definitely it is a political decision. But what will be the capability? I don't know today, offhand, that our colleagues in China will have the capability to dock in a manual or automatic mode with the space station, with their vehicle, to make sure that their docking mechanism and the capabilities are absolutely compatible with those on space station. And again, once the political consideration, I don't know whether it will happen or not, will happen, then the technicality could be studied, and the wisdom to do that maybe.
Well, politics aside, I think, at least personally, I not only would like to congratulate the Chinese on their achievements, but I also think it's very exciting to see again how a nation starts again on this track and gets excited about it, develops the technology, develops the science. And at the scientific level, I mean, we talk also, of course, and we see what they are trying to do. It's a very exciting period, I'm sure.
Anyone else on that?
If we look at the partnership that we've developed over the last 10 years and even before that for the International Space Station, once the political decisions are made and we decide to sit together and work together, I think bringing a new partner in on the technical side, everybody would work at.
So my sense of the meeting here is that you would all be in favor of it.
No objection.
Okay. Let's say Bill Nye said that. No one else said that. But as I'll tell you, as a representative of the Planetary Society, we have members in 130 countries. And people are more alike than they are different. And I would say if we can find ways internationally to have Chinese Space Agency participate in the International Space Station, I think that would be wonderful. This is my opinion. Okay, there's nobody, NASA had no official position. I think it would be wonderful. I remember very well when Apollo Soyuz shook hands. It was part of the diplomatic process. Space was part of it wasn't the turning point or the key, but it was part of it. And I think it would be a wonderful thing to include people around the world. And especially in the big picture, we're all going to go to Mars. That's almost certainly going to have to be an international effort. It's going to take everybody around the world working together, and this would be part of that. So we have another question. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Tetsuo Yasaka from Japan. This is not a question, but a comment to this issue. As I remember, IAF meeting was an important epoch to make the Apollo-Soyuz docking in the middle of the Cold War. And the conversation between United States and Russia during the IF meeting really started this program. So the talk we really just had could be a very important step towards the international cooperation.
We started it right here, ladies and gentlemen. So there you go. Sir, you got applause. Outstanding. There's a follow-up. Oh, the next to you. Yes, please.
My name is Ernst Messerschmidt from Stuttgart University in Germany. I have a question eventually to Mark Uran or Alexei Krasnov about the future. Why there is a self-imposed limit on the lifetime of a space station? Space station is a great laboratory, is internationally being operated. Like laboratories, we have in nuclear or elementary particle physics or plasma physics. And when they had been founded, there was no lifetime limit. And there would be good reasons to have a space station forever, even as a stepping stone, as a space station had been advertised for decades, not only for being a laboratory, but also as a stepping stone, actually as a Earth-near island from which we have spaceships going further away to the destination beyond. And to my opinion, not much has been done to study the options, for example, to descope some modules around 2020, look for specialized modules for close operations and eventually stacking together human spaceflight elements for those further destinations. Are you planning, in your planning, is there any activity on study or technological level to look beyond 2020?
Ernst, I don't think it's true that there's a self-imposed limit. Clearly there are design lifetimes associated with the different parts of the space station, but our whole history of experience is that spacecraft typically operate longer than their design lifetime anyway. It's going to boil down eventually to a benefit-cost decision. It costs all of the partners a lot of money to continue the station's operation, so the partners are going to have to get together at a point in the future and understand, are the benefits really worth the cost? Personally, I believe they will be. My entire interest in the space station has been in the applications and the benefits that we can get from it, and I think that they're going to be there and they will warrant operating the space station well beyond this 2016 lifetime that is driven solely by the design life of the U.S. laboratory. Alexei, your perspective?
I believe that, first of all, thank you for that question. It's very appropriate and good question because, from the engineering standpoint, there is a lot of capabilities. We do have a record and experience operating the Mir space station, which was designed for 5 years, and it flew 15. This space station is designed for 15 years lifespan. We already are working on the extension of the service for lifespan of the first element, which we are celebrating the launch on the 20th of November this year. Because the 15-year lifespan is expanding very soon. And we are planning to extend it further on, and we believe it is very doable. The major question, technically, is how much of fatigue we can expect of the structural materials of the elements themselves, of the docking mechanisms which are holding the modules all together. Because of the dynamic impacts of every docking provides a negative impact on the overall structure as structure grows bigger. We are learning. And I believe this amount of knowledge will allow us to go forward with the expanding lifespan as long as it's possible. It's very prudent to consider that we will extend it further on, maybe to exchange some elements in the configuration, if there is a right thing to do. At least we are planning to add some power capabilities if we are in agreement altogether that we will extending the lifespan. Because for a meaningful scientific research and engineering, there shall be enough power available. and the power system on the S side will degrade for 3 years. We need to think about it to have available additional power in 2015 or 2016 period. That's a lot of questions which shall be asked and answered, but I believe it is doable, and it's very good that you raised such a question. Thank you.
Well, let me say, as an outsider and taxpayer and voter, my understanding is the limit is how much, for example, the United States government decided to fund it. The number 2016 was that's sort of how long the funding was going. Can easily be renewed. I mean, it seems to me, a future government. And let me say also anecdotally, it seems to me that solar panel technology is going to improve here on Earth with our fellow engineers hustling to make solar panels work better, and then someday we can put improved solar panels. And let me ask you, just as an engineer, are there doublers on the space station? Do you know what I mean? Does anybody own an airliner? What you do as your airliner gets old, you take it to Seattle and they take it to Boeing and they take it apart and replace a few structural members, and then you can fly it for another 20 years. Are there design elements like that on the space station?
Absolutely. In space technology, let's say redundancy is a normal thing. Very often we have tripled or quadrupled for capability to, which actually provide safeguards for one or secondary failure. However, the system will operate. And that's the whole space technology, especially for human spaceflight. For human spaceflight, because we are talking about the human beings on orbit, and to sustain the permanent human capabilities. That's how systems are designed.
So it's doable if we have the will. Yeah.
Oh, it's more than doable, Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, during the preliminary design phase, we consciously thought about being able to operate this indefinitely. That's why we came up with a modular design that allowed you to put different elements together in different patterns. And that's why we designed what we call orbital replacement units, the ability to take a given system out of a distributed system that it's in and replace it with a modern element. So the technical capacity is clearly there.
Just a matter of wanting to do it. Right. So let's get to another question. I recognize this guy. Doctor, we'll go back there. Okay, yes. Yes, sir.
I'm Carl Deutsch, Athena Global, Canada. As somebody who was involved in the development of the space station in its early years, I'm delighted to see the enthusiasm of the panel for its utilization. And this is something that we all worked for. I wonder if they could give us some sort of idea of how the scope of the utilization they anticipate will be affected by the decommissioning of the shuttle.
Well, if I may, especially for Europe, of course, that's a very interesting question. We just have our own Columbus laboratory on orbit, and we are faced with, let's say, in the year or 4, with a different scenario of working. Actually, from our perspective, I would consider it a real challenge. One of the things, and maybe it's not brought clearly enough, but space station is different from a robotic mission because you're talking about incremental research. Like you do in your own lab. You learn from what you have done before, you change a few things, and this is just one of those things which changed. It's different than what I thought, but we will find ways to do that. In particular, right now a lot of the experiments are designed on bringing samples back to the ground for analysis in the lab there. But in labs on Earth, there is a lot of technology available that you could transport to space stations so that you could do the analysis up there in the station itself. It's not yet there, but that is clearly one of the directions you want to take so that you can do the research and also do the analysis on board the station and thereby reducing the requirements of bringing samples down to Earth. And actually that would also speed up the turnaround time of the science. That is one thing. It clearly challenges our imagination and creativity to work in this new environment, but I'm sure we will find solutions to that. And that's actually the nice thing of ISS, I would say.
With the shuttle going out has a unique transportation system to return cargo back to Earth. Yeah, there will be an impact, and that's I believe, the nature of your question. However, I believe the impact will not be so huge, because we are thinking about the additional capabilities to return cargo to Earth. I understand the European colleagues are looking at the ATV, which worked excellently on orbit during this first maiden mission. We do have as well our vision to explore capabilities to merge two cargo and crew technologies in order to return cargo, to have a variation of the existing technology to deliver cargo and return cargo as well back to Earth. There will be a very big question of the price tag of the resource needed, because it is very expensive. The 1 single kilogram return to Earth is, I will give you a rough figure, it's about 40,000 US currency. Even higher today. If we are multiplying this figure to the capacity of 1 ton or half a ton to be returned, we shall very carefully assess. What is prudent to do is to adjust capabilities on orbit to make analysis of the results on orbit and to get it electronically back or return samples. Therefore, it's like a fragile balance which will be every time.
You know, one of the developments you may not be familiar with, Carl, is over the past 5 years, we've really seen a transition away from these large 500-kilogram experiment devices to these much smaller mid-deck locker scale, handheld scale research experiments that involve biotechnologies. So we're seeing tremendous interest at the cellular and the molecular level in biotechnology applications that I could talk about for the rest of the afternoon. But they're much easier to transport back and forth. We still have to be able to thermally condition them, refrigerate and freeze and so on, but it's not nearly as challenging as when we were trying to move these very large experiments the size of refrigerators.
Just because that's a very good point, and I would like to add, we had, of course, also in the past already a rather sad period where there was no shuttle flying and the ISS was there. That did not bring science to a standstill. No, on the contrary. We found new ways with smaller equipment, like Mark just said, and we continued the research on station, and I'm sure we will find ways in the future as well.
Bigger is not better in this case.
Dr. Friedman.
I'm Lou Friedman from the Planetary Society. I work for Bill Nye. Could the panel comment on the capabilities and experiments that they would do or add to the space station if the goal is long-duration interplanetary flight?
It's life support experiments will expand, definitely. We are planning to add 2 modules. 1 module next year and the additional research module in 2010, which will include the additional eclipse and medical biological experiments in order to actually complement the capabilities to the greenhouse with the experiments which are already ongoing on orbit. We hope that it will add knowledge and experience for sustainable presence of human being in orbit for a longer period of time.
Well, Chiaki touched on it earlier. Every single system on the space station is a test bed. The environmental control system, the electric power generation system, these are all breaking new technologies that will be qualified in space, in low Earth orbit, so that we can then apply them to vehicles that go on to the Moon and Mars in the future. One of the best examples I like to use is a circuit breaker, because everybody knows what a circuit breaker is. You have them all in your homes. Well, we have complicated circuit breakers on the space station. We call them remote power modules. And we had a design defect in ours. And we discovered what that defect was, and we're now slowly replacing all the circuit breakers on the station. Well, that's one component out of literally thousands of components in a large complex system. And that's what the station does for us. It provides a test bed to space qualify the components for the next generation of exploration technologies.
I'd like to add actually that in terms of research questions, You see now that there is an increased interest in neurosciences. Indeed, what does it mean, not only for the physical body, but also to the brain, the nerve system, etc., to be for a long period of time in space. We see a lot of attention to telemedicine, so keeping people healthy at a distance, and that goes beyond what you know now. It is already telediagnostics. We have done some tests in parabolic flights on tele-assisted surgery. These are the kind of things that we will do in the future, and we have the plans, let's say the blueprints for that are there. And I'm sure that in 10 years or so we will be very excited about the results that we get out of that.
It's a process. Continue on. Let's get the next question. We're getting near the end of our time, so please.
Yes, Denis Schmidt, Arianespace. It has been advised many times during this Congress that a lot of people had to be involved in the ISS programs and the space programs in general. And when we look about the ISS experiments, in the public, nearly nobody knows what is really the return of these experiments made on the ISS. Even inside the industry, not space industry maybe, but in industry. And if I look at this assembly, I'm not sure that a lot of people knows which will be the experiments made in the coming months or years on the ISS. So the question is, do you have in your process a bottom-up process so that to be able to collect needs or ideas concerning experiments, practical experiments to be made on the ISS in the coming months or years?
That's about to change. What I would suggest you do is take a look at this product that we just saw come out of Europe on the quiet revolution that's going on in microgravity research. Once we get out of this assembly phase, and once we can dedicate more of our crew time and more of our resources on station to the scientific and technology programs, you're going to start seeing what the productivity of those programs is. I'll give you just one quick example here today since we're short on time. But we have a team working together in the United States right now that has discovered a new pathway for the virulence of bacteria. There's two properties of the space environment that are really fascinating. Cells propagate at much higher rates than they do on the ground, and the gene expression in those cellular offspring is much different than it is under a 1G environment. So this team has taken those two characteristics of the environment and used them to try to identify a particular strain of a bacteria that can act as a vaccine against that disease. And they're in the process of developing this for salmonella right now, which is a disease that causes worldwide problems in digestive tracts, particularly the old and the young in our population. And I think you're going to see many, many more examples like this in the future.
Well, let me ask you something. So this is something people did not go looking for. This is something they found.
Well, and that's the nature of the program, as it is with most new scientific areas. It's what you find along the way. And the beauty of the space station is having a crew on board allows that kind of interactive, discovery-based science that allows you to adjust your program as information comes in.
See, that to me is the essence of the enterprise, is what my old colleague Bruce Murray said called the new horizon. You know, why are you putting people in space for extended periods? What are you going to learn there? We don't know. That's why we're putting people in space for extended periods.
That's another example I will very shortly will add that maybe not everybody knows that the structure itself of the space station is being worked by bacteria, attacked by bacteria. Even in this very for
bacteria that love aluminum?
For bacteria which love aluminum or love the insulation of the cables, a lot of for effects are going to be very interesting in space. That's in addition to what is the microbiological research is being made on orbit. Right?
Another discovery.
Yep.
Yeah. So is this the last question? Is that okay? We have one more over here, so we'll take this one and one more.
Yes, good morning. Ian Gibson, British National Space Centre. You've talked a bit about extending the mission, about duty of care, I think, towards its dangerous environment. I just wondered, the space debris population has gone up considerably since the project obviously first started. Is there going to be a problem? Can you envisage perhaps having to close the space station because of space debris?
Space debris.
Space debris?
Space debris, is that going to be a...
We do have a record which we keep on orbit, what is happening with the space debris and impacts with the space station. We actually, in Russia, we are doing that continuously from the early years of the flying space station. The record shows us that the very high reliability factor in terms of the probability of impact, which could be fatal. However, the standards are set in such a way that this factor shall be actually lowered by the order, 10 times lower, and therefore the whole space station structure is being provided with a space debris shielding, which provides such a protection.
We also have a collision avoidance system on the station, and we've exercised it, and it works.
If you know what's coming.
That's the key, is the tracking, and we have very good tracking resources as well.
So I believe this is our last question. Bernard.
Yeah. Bernard Frank from the European Space Agency. I have a question because some of the experiments that you are going to conduct now have been designed quite a long time ago. So what is a way where we can then test the latest technologies, for example, biotechnologies, the latest robotic instruments that are commanded by astronauts, so that really we can prepare the next generation of science experiment, life science experiment, or experiment that would be going beyond low Earth orbit. So what is your plan in using the ISS to really test also these latest technologies?
Well, I would like to answer that we are already doing so. Of course, we have also an obligation to those scientists who have been very patient and have been waiting for a long time. And we are flying those. If you look at our own statistics, we come to the conclusion that by 2010 or 11 we have flown all of those experiments. But we have regular new announcements of opportunities, and already we have flown experiments selected in 2004. They flew in 2006, and of course we had to deal with the delays in the program. There is a build-up of things that we want to do. Already right now I see that we are getting more breathing space, and we have those opportunities to fly experiments faster and faster. Coming back also to this applied research, industrial R&D that you want to do, of course, turnover time is a key issue there. You want to have the results pretty soon after you had the brilliant idea. And I think we are going to be able to offer that also with the 6 crew capabilities. We now have all the laboratories on orbit. We are talking about a different station that we knew, let's say, a few years ago.
Please.
Oh, yeah. Since ISS is close to its completion of the construction, which means now we, as 5 agencies, along with the 5 international partners, along with many countries, can make a plan more, maybe I can say easily than used to be. And then we, right now, make some plan increment-wise, so every 6 months. So we have more access to the space utilization program, so that I think the experiment was developed, and then sooner it will be done in space. So that is also makes us so excited.
That's fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank everyone on the panel for taking time. Thank you very much in the audience for being here and participating. I just want everybody to remember the 20th of November. That will be the 10th anniversary of the first module being put on orbit, so that we can perhaps have another 10 wonderful years aloft and, dare I say it, change the world. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Good morning.